I never imagined that the same hands I once held as a toddler would be the ones pushing me out the door. Life has a cruel sense of irony that way. You raise a child with everything you have, your time, your money, your health, and one day she looks at you like you're a leftover from yesterday's dinner, something to scrape off the plate and throw away. The day it happened, it was raining, not a thunderstorm, just one of those long, gray drizzles that settles into your bones. I had just made tea. My joints ached, as they always did in the mornings, but I moved slowly through the kitchen, humming the same lullaby I used to sing to Lily when she couldn't sleep. I still remember the way she'd curl up next to me, her little hands clutching the hem of my nightgown, like I was the only anchor she had in the world. That morning, she didn't even look at me. She sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone, manicured fingers tapping with impatience. I set the cup of tea beside her without a word. Earl Grey, just the way she liked it. She didn't thank me, didn't glance up. "We need to talk," she said flatly, her voice clipped and cold. I stood there for a moment, heart caught in my throat. "Of course," I said, my voice too small. She sighed like I had already inconvenienced her. "It's not working anymore. You living here, it's too much." I blinked. "Too much?" "Yeah," she said, setting her phone down with a dramatic clack. "You're not well, and we're constantly rearranging our schedules around you. The kids are confused, and Marcus says it's putting strain on our marriage." The words hit like punches. I had cooked every meal, folded every piece of laundry, picked the kids up from school when they forgot, and suddenly I was the strain. She wouldn't look at me directly. "It's not personal," she added, as if that softened the blow. "It's just, we need our space. You're kind of an extra mouth to feed." I didn't cry, not in front of her. I just nodded slowly, walked back to my room, and closed the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed I had bought for her childhood room years ago when I worked double shifts at the diner to afford it. I stared at the photo on the nightstand, Lily in pigtails, grinning up at me like I was her whole world. I had become an extra mouth. That night, I packed quietly. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I folded the sweaters I had knitted myself, tucked away the framed photos she never cared to hang, and zipped the suitcase I hadn't used since my last hospital visit. She offered to call me a cab. I declined. I walked into the rain with a wheeled suitcase and a second-hand coat. Not a single hug, not a single thank you. Just a slammed door behind me and the dull thud of finality echoing in my chest. What Lily didn't know, what she couldn't have guessed in all her dismissive confidence, was that I wasn't walking away defeated. I was walking away free, and soon I'd be the one holding the keys. I found a small rental room above a flower shop at the edge of town. It wasn't much, a twin bed, a shared bathroom down the hall, and a window that looked out over a cracked alley. But it was mine. The landlady, Miss Aura, was kind and didn't ask too many questions. She gave me a soft old quilt and said I could pay her when I was able. I paid her in full 2 weeks later. I got a part-time job organizing shelves at the library. Light work, quiet, the kind of job that doesn't ask for much, but gives you just enough reason to get out of bed in the morning. I didn't tell anyone I used to be a school administrator. I didn't tell anyone I once owned a home with a garden and a piano and a framed degree on the wall. I didn't tell them my daughter had kicked me out like a piece of junk she'd grown tired of. I just worked, read, took long walks, and healed. Some days the silence was unbearable. I would boil water for tea and instinctively pull down 2 cups, only to put one back. I stopped checking my phone. Lily never called. The grandchildren I used to read bedtime stories to never asked where I went. I had faded from their lives like a shadow when the light moves. But the worst grief isn't loud. It doesn't wail or scream. It just sits beside you in silence and waits for you to break. It was on one of those quiet evenings, sitting alone with a blanket wrapped around my knees, that something shifted inside me. A memory surfaced, one I hadn't thought about in years. My late husband, George, was many things: difficult, proud, but he had been smart with money. Before the cancer took him, he made sure I was protected. One of his old friends, Alan Truss, was a real estate broker. He used to say, "Don't sell that land in Westfield. It'll be worth a fortune one day." I never paid much attention until that night. I pulled out the box of papers I kept at the bottom of the closet, the one with old tax documents and birth certificates. And there it was, still in my name, untouched, unmortgaged. A small 2-unit brick building in Westfield that George had inherited and quietly put in my name before he died. It had appreciated a lot. I stared at the paperwork, my fingers trembling. I wasn't just some forgotten old woman. I was a property owner. And Lily had no idea. I hadn't seen Lily in nearly 4 months when I walked past the real estate office downtown. It wasn't intentional. I had taken a wrong turn on my way to the post office, distracted by the smell of fresh bread from the corner bakery. But there, in the front window of the agency, was a flyer. I stopped in my tracks. It was a photo of Lily's house. The caption read, "Charming family home in upscale neighborhood, motivated seller." My mouth went dry. So, she was selling. The same house I had scrubbed floors in. The same house I had watched her children in while she got her hair done. The same house where she once made me eat dinner in the garage so the kids wouldn't see me coughing. I stepped closer to the flyer, peering at the listed price. It was high, too high. She wouldn't get that much, not in this market, especially not with the kind of credit Lily and Marcus had. I knew their habits, the leased cars, the fancy vacations booked on payment plans, the constant juggling of bills. She was in over her head, and suddenly I had a thought that didn't feel like revenge. It felt like restoration. I took the flyer and folded it carefully into my purse. That night, I called Alan. He was older now, semi-retired, but his voice still carried that warm, no-nonsense tone I remembered. When I told him what I wanted, he didn't laugh or hesitate. He just asked, "Cash or finance?" "Cash," I said. A pause, then a low whistle. "Margaret, you sure?" I looked around the room, small, quiet, modest, but mine, and I smiled. I've never been more sure of anything. A week later, I signed the papers. Lily never knew I was the buyer. I went through an LLC quietly, through Alan. The house went on the market. There were no offers. Marcus tried to stall the agent. tried to negotiate, until finally the agent hinted that there was a buyer willing to match their asking price. They jumped at it, and just like that, the deed was mine. I didn't go to the closing in person. There was no need. Everything was done through Alan and the LLC. Quiet, clean, invisible. The documents were signed. The wire transfer went through. And just like that, I owned the very house I'd been exiled from. It felt strange at first, not joyful, just quiet, like the silence after a long storm when the air still hums, but nothing has quite settled yet. 3 weeks passed. Lily and Marcus didn't move out. Of course they didn't. They weren't buying a new home. They couldn't afford to. They assumed they'd rent the place back from the new owner. Short term, of course, just while they figured things out. They had no idea who their landlord was. I waited exactly 30 days before sending the first notice through a property manager I hired from Westfield. Her name was Adrienne. Young, sharp, professional. She delivered a lease renewal with new terms. The rent tripled. The grace period gone. Utilities no longer included. I imagined Lily standing in her overly curated kitchen, reading the document in disbelief, her mouth curling with that entitled little pout she always used when things didn't go her way. I imagined Marcus trying to call Adrienne, trying to negotiate, charm, threaten. None of it worked. Adrienne was firm, cool, and uninterested in their stories. Lily called me 2 days later. I stared at the screen as it buzzed, her name flashing like a ghost. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. Her voice was tight, pinched, almost trembling. "Mom, I don't know if you've heard, but we sold the house. It's been hard. We thought we'd be okay, but the new owner..." She took a shaky breath. "They're jacking up the rent. I think we're going to have to move. Marcus is furious. I don't know what to do." I didn't save the voicemail. I didn't need to. She still didn't know. It was 2 weeks later when she showed up. I heard the knock before I saw her. 3 sharp raps on the door to my little apartment above the flower shop. For a moment, I didn't move. I just watched the shadow through the curtain. Small, anxious, unsure. I opened the door. She looked tired, pale. Her eyes had dark circles, and her designer coat was wrinkled, like she'd pulled it off the back seat of the car. She didn't speak right away. I wasn't sure you still lived here," she said quietly. I stepped aside without a word. She walked in like a stranger visiting a place she barely remembered. Her eyes darted around, taking in the simple armchair, the chipped mug on the side table, the book open face down next to a folded blanket. She turned to me. I wanted to explain. I raised a hand gently. "No need." She swallowed. "You must have heard about the house. The new owner is impossible. The rent..." "I know." She blinked. "How?" I walked to the drawer near the kitchen and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was the lease agreement, the new deed, all under my name. I handed it to her. She didn't understand at first. She scanned the paper, flipping pages. Then her face fell. "You?" Her voice cracked. "You bought the house?" I nodded. She stepped back like the floor had shifted under her. "Why would you do that?" I met her eyes, steady, calm, unblinking. "Because I could, and because no one throws me out of something I helped build and gets to call it theirs." She was crying now, not loud, just tears sliding down without permission. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to care either, I said gently. She sank onto the arm of the chair, shaking. We're going to lose it. That's not my burden anymore. She looked up at me. So what now? You make us homeless? No, I said. You make yourselves homeless. I just stopped carrying the weight you put on my back. Silence stretched between us like a chasm. Then she asked, voice barely audible, do you hate me? I shook my head. No, I love you, but I love me more now. She stood. Is there anything I can do? Yes, I said, opening the door. Leave. And she did. No slamming, no screaming, just footsteps fading down the hallway and a soft click as the door closed. I sat down, picked up my book, and returned to the chapter I'd been reading before the knock. Outside, the sun was just beginning to set, casting long gold streaks across the worn floorboards. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt free. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't begging to stay. I was the one with the keys.